recording. Cool. All right.
Got it. All right.
I hope all is well with you. Are you doing okay?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks, mate.
Okay, because
Cheers.
I know you got your surgery tomorrow. Is everything all right?
Yeah, everything's fine. It's
Okay, so
routine. It's
yeah.
old guy stuff, man.
We're just
So
like, oh
old.
no, we were just starting to worry about you with that whole.
No, it's you have to do shit when you're older.
Yeah,
I
we're
mean,
past
I'm not
that.
I'm
old,
getting
but
to that. I just hit 40, so I'm like,
you're
oh,
still a baby.
so I was actually like looking because whenever I was doing some more reading, I was like, I think him and I got like married and had a kid at around the same time. Like I got married 2005, had my first one at 2006.
My son turns 18 tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I'm
So
happy
yeah,
birthday.
Happy birthday
2006.
to him. That see, I have an 18-year-old too. Like, is there any like albums? I know at least with my 18-year-old, where it's like you wish they would get into like certain albums that you're like, I grew up on this. This is amazing. Is there like
Um,
albums or artists that you're like, I wish you'd get into that, and you're just like, oh,
no, he really likes music and he discovered it on his own without me prompting him. We have a really nice record collection at home, but he
right,
discovered, he's really into like a lot of we've been to a few concerts together. I mean, I always take him to concerts. We have a good time, no matter if it's someone I care about or not. But he's really into sort of hard rock, like pre-1970 hard rock, things like let me see, the Blue Cheer,
yep.
and like he's been down some incredible rabbit holes and he has really good taste in music. So I'm like, all right, you're a cool kid.
Right.
It's funny because he kind of discovered a lot of the music from my past as well,
Oh wow.
um, through his friends and stuff like that. I mean, he's lived with me his whole life and he hadn't really paid attention to that
Right.
part.
That
And
sounds
then
about right.
he discovered Murder Incorporated and really
Oh,
liked it.
yep.
Um,
Yep.
and yeah, I thought that was really funny.
He dropped a Reddit that I was looking up, and he's like, "I'm Chris Connelly's son. Ask me anything." And then there's people just asking him all these questions on the website Reddit.
He did?
Yes, he did. You'll have to look that up. It's
Wasn't it a two-part? Like,
yeah, it was a
yeah,
two-parter. Yeah, it was a two-parter. So yeah,
Oh,
you'll have
God.
to check.
Ask me anything about my dad.
Yeah, pretty
yeah.
much that's
What
what
kind of
it was.
Uh,
toothpaste does he use?
if my kids did that, I'm like, I don't even want to look at.
Right. Um,
Yeah.
do you got anything going on that you want to promote before we start on the questioning?
It's,
Any albums?
Um, I have nothing coming out immediately
Okay.
uh in the near future. Yeah, although I do have a lot of things that are ready and are going to come out in 2025.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
But I have a new band with Mark Gemini Thwaite, who I've worked with before. He's um plays with Peter Murphy regularly and is plays in The Mission regularly. And also the drummer in the band is Paul Ferguson from uh he's ex Killing Joke.
Yeah.
So we have a band together called Seven Dials, and we've just finished the record. That's Seven Dials. It's an area of London. Seven, the number that the word seven
Oh,
and dials, like the dial of a clock.
yep.
So that's a great record. But probably won't see the light of day till springtime of next year, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just finished it.
Oh, that's beautiful. I can't wait to hear it. So that's fantastic.
can you talk about the sound at all, or are you keeping that still under wraps?
Your Zoom is misbehaving.
Oh,
My Zoom is not misbehaving. It's okay now. I see you move, but you froze
Oh,
for a second.
oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, we've been dealing with like internet issues, so it's like
right.
that's yeah. So, but hopefully everything will be okay now. So,
Okay.
okay, we good?
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. Yeah, do you have a like on how the album's gonna sound? Do you have like an idea of do you want to drop like what the album's gonna sound like, or are you just kind of gonna surprise?
Yeah, it's I think it's a really contemporary sounding hard rock record.
Nice.
Well, it doesn't sound like hard rock bands, it's just rock that's hard,
Oh,
okay? Rather than hard rock. It's rock that's hard, it's very melodic. It it has it has a lot of keyboards on it as well. I guess that's all I can say. I'm not good at advertising myself very well,
that's
but
okay.
I really like the record. I think we did a good job. I think my voice sounds good, and these guys play their asses off on it. The drums are just fucking phenomenal. It's like thunder.
Yeah.
Um, it's a better rock record than anyone else has made. Okay.
Now you got me excited.
Yes,
I can't
there
wait
we
to hear
go.
that. That's awesome.
It's so much better
Yeah.
than anyone else's rock record ever.
Yeah. I was gonna ask, last month I did Martin Adkins and we were talking about the museum. Have you had a chance to go down and check out the museum yet?
Yeah, I've been to the museum a couple of times. I've done a couple of things there.
Okay. Tell me about your
Uh,
thoughts and feelings on walking into that and then just the feelings are overwhelming or anything like that.
no, they're not. They're
I
I
love
don't mean that in a negative way, but I don't really yeah, I mean, it has things from my past in it
yeah.
and the past of and that's they're all in one room and that's convenient. I don't mind,
Love it. No,
but
it's
at the
okay.
same time, I just don't like get a fucking huge erection when I see
Gotcha.
my past accomplishments. It's like, yeah,
No, I
great. Yay me,
right.
and I like what I'm doing now and I'm proud of my past,
Okay, well,
very
good.
much so. Well, much of my past I'm proud of. Some of it I'm not proud of at all. I mean, I'm human. Um, but I'm glad the museum exists and it's more for people who aren't me, I think.
I love it. No, that's
More
a
for people who weren't in the bands, right? It's
right.
more
Right.
exciting for other people to go in and have a look at what's there.
Right. That's probably why a lot of people are just like, here, take this shit. I don't need it just to like take up any space or any memory in my life. Like, here, you take, make some money off of it. I feel like that's kind of what's been going on with all that.
Yeah, I've never been a person who I've been better about it. I guess since I had kids, like as far as my own records and stuff, I make sure I have two of every record
Okay.
so they can have it. But before that, like I just, a lot of people I know, like Martin and Paul Barker, they're really good at saving stuff. I just don't. And I'm glad. I never have collected my life. And it's funny because it sort of plays into my writing as well. Like, rather than if I'm writing about something, I'd rather it come from referencing my own memories of it. And if these memories are slightly wrong, then that's okay. I don't want to research me or research what I've done or anything like that to try and get things right. Um, Inaccuracies are interesting to me,
Yeah.
and there's many of them.
Right.
Yeah.
What kind of kid were you like growing up in Scotland, and what kind of music were you like listening to your parents' music and kind of found your own taste, or how did that work out for you growing up?
No, my parents had horrible records. Um,
Oh, right, yeah.
so I was born in 64. And we had a very the family didn't have a lot of music in the house. We had let me see, we had like a couple of Frank Sinatras, a couple of Nat King Coles, which now I like that stuff. Back
Yeah.
then it was just boring old people music.
Yeah.
We had my dad liked the opera writers Gilbert and Sullivan.
Oh, wow.
Um, just awful. And also we had a lot of traditional Scottish music as
Yeah.
well, like just bagpipe music, which is, yeah, of course we did.
Yeah.
But that wasn't a major part of our household music. The radio was on. A lot of church going. So religious music has always been a big part of my life. Whether I want that or not, it's just in there. And I actually do like it. I like it a lot
Yeah.
because it was there and it had a certain sound. There's nothing like hearing a bunch of people singing in a church or in a building that's designed with these acoustics, you know. It's like how I feel about bagpipe music. I think bagpipe music is awesome, like a bunch of people playing bagpipes all in unison together and that sound echoing and slapping back off the walls. Um, so when I got a wee bit older, you know, when I was about 8, I changed schools. I went to a different school, and the music teacher at that school made me join the choir. Like he said, you have to join the choir. You got a good voice, you know, you can sing. He probably didn't compliment me at all. He probably just said you're joining the choir, and
Yeah.
that's it.
It was implied.
Um, but you know, he was a good guy, Martin Rutherford. I'm actually still a little bit in touch with him.
Oh, good.
Uh, yeah, yeah, he's a good guy. He turned me on to a lot of music that otherwise I just wouldn't have listened to. He kind of had a good way of breaking it down.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to temper what I tell you by sort of telling you that, you know, this was teachers in the mid 70s. They've
Of
like,
course.
you know, children should be seen and not heard kind of attitude. They weren't like, hey man, sit down, let's listen to some music together. It was like, this is what's happening. He turned me on to Monteverdi.
Yeah.
Monteverdi was what we first sang in the choir, namely Beatus Ver by Monteverdi. And it's funny going back to it because I have a record of some choir doing Beatus Ver, and I actually got in touch with one of my musical choir mates recently and said, "How the fuck did we read that music? Like, I can't read music now.
Neither can
I've forgotten what I was
I. I
taught."
forgot it
But
too. Yeah.
at that age, that stuff is so complicated. And I mean, he said we did it by ear mostly and by kind of following the dots. Um, but a big thing for me was at that point, which is like 1975, we went as a choir to Italy and we sang in all these cathedrals around about Venice.
Yeah.
And some of them we had to get on a boat to go to. They'd be in these little islands and things like that. And it was just amazing. It was so goth.
Yeah. Those old, oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
We were
You know,
looking.
so
Yep.
that was my musical bedrock, if you like. And then after that, like very quickly after that, about a year later, I was in an accident. I broke my leg, so I was off my feet for a long time. I started listening to pop radio. And I also started listening to Bowie and Alice Cooper and but anything that was in the charts in Britain during the mid 70s, like from the middle of 1975 on. So a lot of soul music, R&B, like Barry White, Stevie Wonder, all that stuff. I loved it. The charts were really, there wasn't like a rock chart and a soul chart. There was just the chart
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the album chart. And so I listened to the radio all day when I was off my feet with the broken leg. And I heard so much repetition of the songs
Mhm.
that I still know a lot of them off by heart,
Yes.
you
Right.
know.
Yes.
So, and
Mid
it wasn't until huh?
Oh,
I'm
I was
sorry.
gonna say mid 90s was very similar with us to where like there was an oldie station that would play a lot of like garage rock from the 60s and Motown.
Yeah.
Listen to a lot of that. And then our older sister, she was doing like very like 90s goth around that time. So she was like listening to like Nine Inch Nails, Smashing Pumpkins, things like that. She actually was the one who got me into Bowie. Like I saw The Labyrinth and I was
Uh-huh.
like, oh, that's a kid's movie, whatever. But
Yeah.
it was whenever I heard Dead Man Walking from Earthling,
Yeah, Earthling.
um, and that just I was like, what is this? The combination of like the electronic with the alternative, and then all of a sudden ending it with like jazz piano. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just it's crazy. But I love your work with the Sons of the Silent Age with
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I've studied Bowie hard since 1976, since Station to Station came out. That was it for me. And I was, I was 11 at that time, and I had started buying records. And I was so fortunate because I didn't have many records, and my brother had a few records, and got Station to Station. I got a couple of Alice Cooper records, and then punk happened. And so
like
I didn't have the unfortunate, I didn't fall into any fucking Yes Jethro Tull trap. Um, Punk came along. I know I dodged a bullet, and Punk came along, and it was great because I could really feel how much people like my older brother really felt relief that finally, uh, out go these, he had a couple of Yes albums, but and he bought New Rose by the Damned, and Anarchy in the UK, and yeah, I bought the first Damned album the day it came out in February of '77, and all that stuff, Buzzcocks, all that stuff. It was wonderful, but it was also what was so great about punk is it lasted such a short period of time that you couldn't catch your breath and then you had post-punk. You had bands like Wire putting out albums, their Chairs Missing album, which was less than a year after punk had hit Scotland. And there was all these amazing sounds that started to come out. Gang of Four, Wire, Throbbing Gristle, all that stuff. And it was just a wonderful time to be a teenager buying records.
Yeah, absolutely.
especially in Europe.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
in the US at around that time, it definitely wasn't the same feel, or at least,
No, no,
yeah.
I get it.
I mean, I think in the US there was definitely small pockets because I listened to a really great interview the other night with David Thomas from Perubu, who was talking about, as many people have, like being in Ohio was lucky. A lot of bands like T-Rex and Bowie went through Ohio, Cleveland, and played that. But having to search hard for the music you were looking for, um, it was hard to do. Mail order in the back of music papers and things like that. And but look at what happened. Like his music is so unique, and so many people who had bands in the mid 70s who were not wanting to listen to, stadium rock. They had to work really hard to find records that they liked, and they did. And we in America, you had some really strange and wonderful bands that came around at that time.
Definitely had some good pockets,
Yeah.
especially like, yeah, New York too. And then you
Yep.
get like, I mean, Detroit at the time, you got like, I know like Alice Cooper was definitely
Yep.
there. And then
MC5 and all them. Yeah.
MC5, Iggy Pop, you
Hmm.
got Death, whatever.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
Mhm.
Afro punk band.
Hmm. Yeah. And Midwest, I mean, it's tough. I mean, you're now living in Chicago, but
Yeah.
it's hard to, I mean, you really got to work your ass off to try and get heard in New York or in, LA because I mean, there's so much going on there where now, I mean, thankfully with Chicago, you know, there's kind of this own thing going on, especially, with what Wax Trax was doing and stuff like that. But, for I think early on, it's like it's hard to if you're in the Midwest, it's like boom, boom, you gotta go one way or the other just to be heard. So
Right. I mean, it was the same in Edinburgh too. There was no music business in Edinburgh. It was all in London.
yeah.
And when I was first in a band, if you wanted to have any kind of chance, you had to find what record label you wanted to talk to, call them up, try and make an appointment, and then you got on a overnight coach with your cassette and went down and tried to play it. I mean, we as a band, the FiniTribe, we did that a lot. It was really fucking hard work, and generally with no results at all. It's just like it was a wasted journey. But in terms of getting a record deal or anything, but not in terms of learning, because you learn stuff, you know, not good stuff, not all the time, but you did learn things, you know. It was hard work.
Yeah. I mean, but FiniTribe, like I was listening to it and a lot of that stuff, I mean, it was very just I mean, you hear a lot of those elements because of course I've listened to Ministry and Revolting Cocks and a lot of your solo stuff, but going back, you hear those elements in, like Revolting Cocks where it's very percussive. It sounds like you did a lot of like did you do a lot of that production work with a lot of that where it's very percussive and a lot of um like drums and stuff like that. Like it has this, I don't know, I guess the best way I can describe it, it's got a very dance rhythm style to it. You know what I'm saying? Like I can
Yeah.
hear, yeah.
Everybody in Edinburgh wanted to be funky. I mean, it's the point everyone in Britain in a band wanted to be funky. I mean, you can listen to bands like 23 Skidoo, A Certain Ratio. We listened to Black American music. That was it. James Brown was the shit.
Yeah. So
And
totally.
a lot of other sort of lesser known musicians like that. But that's what was going on in the clubs. And so the bands after punk, it was funk, but we're like these pasty white boys from Edinburgh try to play funk. And I love that synthesis. I love that that's what happened. And there's bands like Joseph K from Edinburgh who were the same. We wanted to play funk music. Something changed in the FiniTribe, when we sort of maybe, oh gosh, let me see, like 3 or 4 years into our journey, we started using samplers to sample sounds, but we also started using a shit ton more percussion.
Yeah.
And like the music in the dance clubs started changing. There was things like hip hop had started, and I mean very early hip hop, but also from DC there was go-go,
Mhm.
which was there for a wee minute, but it had a really huge influence on the FiniTribe. Like also, which is funny because my friend Davey Miller from the FiniTribe pointed out to me 2 weeks ago how much we listened to the 12-inch of Open Your Heart by Madonna when we were working on the 12-inch of Detestimony. That record was never off the turntable. It was such a perfect 12-inch single. And so you take those sounds and like squeeze them down the throats of these wee Edinburgh white boys, and then you get this fucking bastardized Scottish funk. When I joined the Revolting Cocks, we had Bill Rieflin on drums, so incredible, incredible drummer. But a lot of the percussion was just programmed, which is
Right.
very different for me because on these old records, I mean, it really sounds programmed. It doesn't sound like the FiniTribe played everything. Like we all played percussion at the same time to
Yeah,
get that. It's
I
all we knew. We didn't have the technology to program the percussion. And we had a fucking wicked drummer, Simon McGlynn. And so he overdubbed a ton of the percussion then, and we did our sort of fumbly, awkward percussion on top of that and got the results.
that's great. What led you to transition from like post-punk and FiniTribe to more aggressive industrial scene with like Ministry and Revolting Cocks?
I think that originally it was just I heard some of that music, and it wasn't just that music. There was a huge for me movement in the UK with Adrian Sherwood's On You Sound label. And I've always been a really huge reggae fan. And On You Sound was putting out these reggae albums that were just killer sounding, like really new sounding. But also there was bands like Mark Stewart and the Mafia um, that were also produced by Sherwood, putting out these incredible records. many members of the ministry were playing on these records. And I didn't know that, but I was attracted to the music. And then I heard Big Sexy Land, and it got it was starting to get like Adrian Sherwood made things as loud as he possibly could. And you can hear that on the records when sounds come in, they really bam, they
Oh
would
yeah.
hit you in the
Yeah, Pretty
face.
Hate Machine.
And when
Yeah.
I heard Ministry, well, he produced Twitch by Ministry. And when I heard Ministry, it was like, this is the future to me at that point. It was synthetic music, but it had the raw guitars of punk that I liked. And they were a lot more disciplined in the music. So at that point, and we're talking like 1986, 87, that to me was the future. And that was what I wanted to be a part of back then.
Beautiful.
So I was very lucky. I met Al, and we got along great. And he asked me to start working with him. And that's how that happened. Um, and I made the transition from Edinburgh to Chicago.
Yeah. Now you live in Chicago. I think that's amazing.
Dude.
For sure. Were there any other artists or albums that profoundly influenced like the work of industrial music where you were listening to once you kind of were transitioned into that sound, was there anything you were listening to at the time that kind of helped profoundly push that sort of, sound
Yeah,
coming
yeah.
through your, your instrumentation?
At that point in time, I'd started re-listening to Kraftwerk a lot. I also was listening to Chrome a lot.
Mhm.
Um, but I also there was industrial bands who were not, Throbbing Gristle by that point had been split up for a long time. But Coil, Chris and Cozy, SPK put out a couple of killer records they before they didn't put out a killer record. Um, Test Department and Nowbatten. Test Department were a big one for me because uh they're a band I saw early on in really strange situations. Like I saw them playing in an old bus depot in Edinburgh, and the audience were around the band, if you could call them a band, but they were using, they had a huge skip from parts of a crane, and they were just battering. It was amazing. That was a great time. Also, it must be said, like, when Nick Cave started making records under Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, that was because I'd loved the birthday party. But this was I could see at the end of the birthday party with these EPs, the EP, The Bad Seed, I could see where he was going, and it was far more well, I mean, he's always been so incredibly literate, but it was getting slower, and you could tell that he was growing as a lyricist.
Of course, yeah.
So when The Firstborn is Dead and From Her to Eternity were still two of my favorite records. I mean, I love all of his records, but these two um, were very special to me. Um, but I was really into listening to stuff that kind of defied melody at that point, like The Test Department and Half Mensch by Einstürzende Naubaten and Drawings of Patient OT. These were records where, can you imagine? I mean, this was unprecedented sound in a sense for even I wouldn't say I was a casual listener of music, but uh well, and the Swans, yeah,
Yeah.
Cop.
Oh my gosh,
I saw
absolutely.
this in one year, 1985. It was like having your head shoved in a toilet. It's so
So
intense, man.
much. Yeah.
It was a lot, and it was great. Change is coming. Things are changing as they should.
No, because I was
So yeah.
there was a concert movie. It was Noise Boughton, and they were with I think it was a Japanese cyberpunk director. I think it was Half Mensch. It was like a concert DVD, and they were playing in a warehouse, and it was the most insane. Like I just it was everything that I've been like looking for, and it happened. And I was like, oh my, like it blew my mind. And I have one question. If you could play a live show at any non-musical venue, where would it be?
Oh gosh, what a great question.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. Um, you know what? I would like to play. There's a cathedral in Paris called Reims Cathedral. Um, and I only really noticed it when I got there's a live album by Nico that was recorded there. It's a bootleg, but oh, she was opening for Tangerine Dream.
No way.
Yeah, 1974. And it's just a haunting, beautiful sound. I would love to play there, Reims, Reims. Yeah.
That's awesome. I knew I listened to you did a song tribute to Nico, and it was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, there's even a song on that album about that night, about playing at Reims Cathedral. And I loved making that record because, there's plenty of books and stuff, but the minutia of what was she doing there, I just sort of went with my imagination. It's like, well, what does a 40-year-old junkie do in Paris? Um, but I really enjoyed the historical fiction part of making that record.
It was wonderful.
It was,
Thank you.
I
Yeah,
loved it.
absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anything you want to ask him? I feel like I'm hogging up a lot of
No, you're
No,
good.
go ahead. Go
It's your
ahead.
thing,
No,
man.
you're good.
I think one question I have always had about ministry, whenever I was listening to that as a teenager, I was definitely like a book junkie. Still a book junkie. I'm a librarian, so like in books. But one thing that I really loved about like Mind is a Terrible thing um was I've always wondered, lyrically speaking, that album I thought was very different sounding between the one before and the one after.
Yeah.
Um, and so with your input on it, I always wondered if you had a hand in like the lyrics with that particular one, like Never Believe and some of the other ones, because
Yeah.
they seem very literate.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
all my lyrics. Um, I mean, there's some songs in there I guess I didn't write lyrics for, but Thieves, which I wrote with Ogre,
Mm.
um, So What, that's all me. And Cannibal Song, that's all me as well. So the way I used to do it with Al was he would have real bad blocks with lyrics. It was not he's good at it, but he didn't have the confidence. So we would discuss what he wanted to sing about. So in the song Breathe, for example, which is another one that me and Ogre and Al worked on together, is the environment, the the way that things were changing in the environment, and that's what we wrote about. It's harder to breathe. There's so much smog.
Yeah.
So What was Jello Biafra had actually given us a movie, like one of these. It's like a 1950s sort of cautionary tale. Don't smoke marijuana, teenage crazy.
Was anti-drug.
And so all the samples come from that film. And I can't remember what happened. Like some girl runs over someone and kills them or something.
Reefer.
And ends up going to court, and that's the judge reading her sentence. And so what was a kind of like
Yeah.
fingers up at the man, if you like, or at the judicial system. So yeah, I mean, I too have always been a voracious reader, um, and it definitely plays into how I write, uh, and influences how I write more than music does, in terms of lyrics. I would say, although they both work in tandem together. Uh, so that's how the mind happened. Some of the lyrics are mine, some are a combination of me and Ogre and Al working together.
Right. So, one question to kind of segue. So like you guys were writing these sort of like songs and lyrics and things like that back then. So it's been a better part of like 4 decades, and there's still so much going on out there. Have you ever just been like, I've been telling you fucking guys for like 4 decades, like to stop, and it still seems cyclical, that it's like we're still coming back to some of the same things like fascism and things like the capitalism
Yeah.
as well as the environment and things like that. Does it exhaust you at all?
No, it doesn't exhaust me as a writer, because I think that, as a writer, you're influenced by your environment, whether you like it or not. That's what I think. I can't. Everything informs your life, and though I don't think I write terribly, a lot of terribly political stuff now. Or well, maybe no, I have in some of my collaborations for sure. Like during the pandemic, I made a whole record with the Joy Thieves, um, which was the most angry political statement I felt that I'd made for a long, long time, because everyone was angry.
Mhm.
I think at a sort of I think you get to a certain age, or I got to a certain age, where you can look back and see that, yeah, things are cyclical, and I kind of knew that nothing would get better. I kind of knew, sadly, that art is not strong enough to change policy.
Right.
Uh, and that saddens me, but it's not going to stop me. And it's not going to stop Al, who's he's very outspoken about that stuff. It means a lot to him. Injustices, things like that. And it's not going to stop him. So, you keep going. Um, and I think the fact that nothing much has changed, in fact, it's got worse, speaks really badly of us. But, back then, we had no idea that the internet was around the corner, and that was going to accelerate things a lot more. And, for better, or for better and for worse, it has done. And so information spreads quicker, and assholes can be assholes with other assholes a lot quicker than they used to be. They just have to click a button. They don't have to like rent some sleazy town hall in the middle of nowhere to have their KKK meetings. The internet has proven that there's an awful lot of dicks out there. Um,
That's
but
true.
it's also, given us some hope as well, in that we can be aware, at least. Although I feel that we're being bombarded to the point where I think a lot of people are like, what am I gonna do?
It's overstimulating for
It
sure.
is overstimulating.
It is overstimulating, but I feel like, myself, as I become more aware of these things, I have definitely realized that just doing my art is not enough. And so there's a sort of a side of me that does, I do things for other people with my art. Like, I'll contribute money to this that I make from this. It's the least I can do, and other artists do the same thing, and it helps. It's something.
That's good. No, that's fantastic.
Amazing.
Sorry, I feel like we're bouncing around.
It's fine.
Was
I've bounced a lot. I mean, I've done an awful lot of stuff, and I've never sat in one place for very long with my creativity. So bouncing around, I'm used to.
You do have like this creative just charisma, and you're constantly being creative, and you feel like you're like I've noticed, at least from, everything early on and even your solo albums, I feel like your solo albums kind of exceed everything your collaborative work. And are you just one of those like, if I'm not creating, then what the hell am I doing?
Um, I used to be a lot more like this. Now I'm actually pleased. I I made that record I told you about, and I've got another couple of records all in the can ready to go. So I've not actually done anything creative for a couple of months. I just I haven't, it's not like I don't want to or I do want to. I've got other stuff going on. I've got other stuff to do. And I'm not worried about it going away or anything like that. I think if it does go away, if it does fade away, then that's the way, that's me. That's as a human being, I move on to other things. Um, I am addicted to making records.
Yeah.
I am. I have to follow that trail until the conclusion. And once the record's made, I kind of move on and go for the next one. But my life since I was about 20 has been punctuated by records, and that's important to me. It's what I do. So I don't have to be creative all the time. I guess at this point in my life, if I were to drop dead tomorrow, I've left a fairly good legacy of records for people to explore. And that's just great. And I'm where I'm sitting right now, I'm surrounded by instruments and things like that. It's really fantastic. If I know it's there, and that excites me to know that I have a little studio down here if ever I want to come down and mess around.
Oh, it's great. What was your collaborative process like with Al Jurgensen and Ministry and Revolting Cocks? And did you have a particular dynamic when it came to writing and performing together on stage?
Um, I think my collaborative process back then was, Al and Paul were the producers, and they would surround themselves with a number of creative people who they would use for to make the records. Okay, so like a director of a play, you have person A doing this, person, and they were the directors and the producers. They were in charge of the aesthetic to a certain point. But I was very young when I joined.
Yeah.
So that at first that part was like, oh fuck this. I want to, I'd come from the FiniTribe.
Yeah.
We were six people who made democratic decisions about everything. That's a pain in the ass. Like looking back on it now, uh getting six people to decide how a snare is going to sound is just a terrible idea. Terrible. It takes forever.
Yeah.
Um, so I soon learned that Al and Paul have a vision, let them get on with it. Take pointers from Al and Paul about where you want to go with something, uh, lyrically. And fortunately for us, as you probably know, that a lot of the records we made were parallel to each other. So the Revolting Cocks, Beer Steers, and Queers was being made at the same time as The Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste.
Kids were
So
cranking them
like,
out. Yeah.
this sounds good, but it's not very ministry-ish. So let's make it a Cox song.
Yeah.
So there was no waste. And once it became a Cox song, you could do all these other things to it to make it, more groovy or whatever. Um, as far as being on stage with Ministry, that was a very loud, disciplined machine, as opposed to the Cox, which was just a loud which was just allowed.
It's chaotic, right? Yeah.
It was a loud, disciplined machine, and at first it was terrifying, but it soon became clockwork.
Yeah.
Um, Again, I was very young when I did that stuff. I couldn't do it now. I don't think. I don't think that my I couldn't tour with Ministry now. I don't think my voice would be up for it.
I don't know how he's
Uh,
doing it now. I have no idea how Al's still touring around like this. It's crazy.
yeah, he's got an energy about him when it comes to like he always like his guitar playing and everything like that was so like on the meter. No matter how much he drank or whatever, he was always like, bam, on. He's just got that thing. I don't have that thing. I can't drink and play. It's a stupid
Right.
idea.
Him and Paul are back together working on their last album. If they asked you, "Hey, do you want to be on the album?" Would you accept that?
Yeah, absolutely. I love working with Alan Paul.
Hopefully, I'll send this to him and be like, "Hey, can you get Chris on the album? Get him on there. Do it."
I mean,
Uh,
I don't. I would be happy to contribute something to it if that's what they wanted. Yeah, of
Love to
course.
see that. Yeah, absolutely. Ministries Psalm 69 became, a seminal industrial album. What do you think made that album stand out compared to all the others in the genre? Like it made it stand out above Nine Inch Nails, Manson, all the other bands that kind of came around at that time. I mean, I felt like it kind of dominated. I mean, what was your thoughts and feelings on that one around the time?
I think, I mean, all I can say really is that Alan Paul have made records like many people make records without thinking too much about who else is making records at that time or who else has made records before them. I know that for sure they've referenced they've used records to reference guitar sounds or things like that. But ultimately the whole sphere is their minds. And it just happened that that record became what it became. I don't know if it was the management at the time or, it certainly wasn't an easy record to make. I was there for a lot of it, and it was hard work for them. And they kind of were unprecedented when Land of Rape and Honey came out. That was a record that didn't sound like any other record in many ways at that time. And so a little further along, two albums later, uh, their sound is still unprecedented, and there was some, imitators, but they couldn't do what Alan Paul did. They
Right.
couldn't do they didn't have what they brought to the table, which is fine, there's room for everyone, but their record was the nastiest.
With a lot of the albums that you were kind of contributing around the time, was everybody kind of worked together, with Revolting and PTP and all this other stuff. What made you want to work with KMFDM on Xtort? Like it didn't seem like everybody was kind of working. KMFDM felt like it was kind of doing its own thing. What made you want to work with them on that album?
Well, Bill Rieflin was working on it, and I mean, I was very friendly with all of these guys, with Sasha and Gunter and Nick. We were all friends, and it was I've never ever done anything careerist. I just did it because I thought it'd be good fun, and it
Yeah.
was. It was really good fun. But I they were there, they were in Chicago, and I was like, sure, they were recording downtown at CRC. It's easy to get to. It was no problem. And I hadn't done anything like that for a couple of years. It was fun to do.
That's great. Did you want to ask him about the solo, David Bowie?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
I was
so
about to go into that, but yeah, I'll let you
no,
go ahead.
you're
Yeah,
good.
you're good.
As a fellow David Bowie enthusiast, I always like to ask people like, where were you on the day you found out that Bowie passed?
I was in bed.
Hmm.
It was weird because it's funny, I'll tell you what, the day he passed, we were rehearsing my band Sons of the Silent Age.
Yeah.
We were rehearsing, we were playing a show, let me see now, a few days after he died, we were playing at a party. We were playing at someone's birthday party. So we got together that Sunday and we went through Starman and Ziggy and a bunch of other songs we're going to play. And went home and I was fast asleep and there was a coat hanger on the bed and either me or my wife moved in her sleep and kicked it off and it woke us both up. My wife picked up her phone and just went, oh, so it was like 1 in the morning and we couldn't sleep. We had to get up. We went downstairs and watched like 3 episodes of Blackish in a row. But
That
it
Oh,
was a horrible feeling. It
oh
was really awful. I
yeah.
mean, of all fucking people.
yeah.
Right. And I remember like whenever it was the day before as well, I was working a side job at the store and they were having a meeting and they had music playing overhead on the speakers. And all of a sudden Sound and Vision came on. I was like, shh, and everybody in the meeting's like, what? And I was like, it's Bowie. And they're like, the fuck are you talking about, Jared? So I'm sporadic like that. But and so the next day, I was making breakfast for my daughters and my wife, and she walks up and she's like, you haven't heard, have you? And I'm like, heard what? And she's like, David Bowie passed. And I just broke down and cried. And I was just
Yeah.
like, what? I was like, that he just seemed like he would always be around.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And that was
Yeah.
really something that you're just like, wow, the Starman, they really took him. Like but it's
It's funny though, because I read into the video for Lazarus before he died. I saw it and I was like, I had this feeling looking at that video that things were not great. I remember like um maybe a year or 2 years before I was talking to Sinead O'Connor and she said he's got cancer. Told me and I said, "Are you sure?" And she was like, "Yeah, my manager told me." And so I didn't, neither of us knew if it was really true, but she had it on fairly good authority that he was unwell.
that had to have been another kind of a hard thing to hear about is whenever she passed for
Yeah, it was. It was. She was such a tortured soul, but such a brilliant soul as well. It was very sad. It's just, you know, losing the biggest bummer is that these are creative people who I feel certainly had a lot more to say. Like we had Black Star. What could have happened after Black Star?
right.
But we have what we have, and I'm grateful for it.
Absolutely. And I remember like listening to like seeing certain clips of that show um like on YouTube and things like that. And I was listening to your Lazarus
Uh-huh.
whenever and Sons of the Silent Age were like performing it. And my wife was like listening and she's like, and you could see like the gears were like kind of turning in her head. And I was just like, what's up? And she's just like, but this sounds live. She's like, she's like, Bowie couldn't have possibly at that same. I said, no, that's Chris Conley. And she's like, that's Chris. She's like, it sounds just like Bowie was
Yeah.
in the fucking room. And I was like, that's how brilliant the band is.
Yeah.
This
Thank you.
hearing and just like seeing everybody, and I know like YouTube clips, it's obviously like you're only getting like a scaled down version of how emotional and heavy that concert
It-
had.
Playing that time it was very heavy, very, very heavy. And that gig in particular, Sinead was playing with us, and also Ava Cherry, who was
Right.
Bowie's lover. So yeah, it was pretty intense, as you can well imagine.
So to segue, sorry, I
No,
didn't
good.
mean
No, please go ahead. No, you're
to.
good. No.
So recently, whenever you had like I know your band also gets like random like special guests, and one that's been kind of like I'm like, how did that happen? Was the Michael Shannon. Like, did he
Oh,
approach you or did you guys approach him? All of a sudden it's
I approached him because he's from here
oh,
Oh, okay.
and he knows a bunch of people that we know, but he had done a concert doing Lou Reed's The Blue Mask. And we needed an opener, and I said, "Well, Michael Shannon does Lou Reed. Let's get him." And he was totally happy to do it. So it's just become a thing now, that he'll do it with us every year, if he's available. Um, and we're friends, and it's really great. And he's really, really fun to play with, because he's such a good actor that and such a good singer as well, that doing something like that is, I don't know if it's easy for him, but he gives it his all. I got to say, it's a lot more fun for me to perform these days, in that situation where I'm having to channel somebody else,
yeah.
than it is to be Chris Connelly on stage. That is terrifying to me. I get so nervous, but doing the David Bowie thing means that I have several masks to hide behind.
Right. I
And
get it.
it and I see that in him as well. Like when he did Iggy Pop with us, like he was stretching backstage and he had an iPad and he was looking at Iggy Pop footage, and he becomes that
That's
character. Much in the same way, it reminded me of what I'd read about when Bowie did the Elephant Man
yeah,
without makeup,
with his mind,
right?
with his
That
mind. Just
Yeah, he just became the character, and he had the tools, and I really respect and love that. And I respect and love that about Mike, because he has those incredible tools that he knows how to access to become something, to become someone on stage.
I really enjoyed seeing David Bowie's Elephant Man. I feel like the fact that we've only had a certain like couple of clips of it, I
Yeah.
would love to have seen that in its entirety, the way
Yeah,
it.
me too. Me too. It would have been so great.
And I know with what mine is a terrible thing. You guys sampled like a Fahrenheit 451 part of that movie, I think. And then
Yeah.
it's weird that like a couple of decades later, Michael Shannon is in the Fahrenheit
Yeah.
451 movie,
Yeah.
which like Bradbury was from Waukegan, which is little
I didn't know that.
yeah, that
Really?
was his home. That's like my big fan of is like David Bowie and Ray Bradbury. Like but it
It's
was
funny because Mike's from the North Shore as well. I mean, he's
oh nice.
from up that direction.
Yes, over in
And
Waukegan that's like his hometown. So it's like
fucking hell, that's such a weird town.
it
Have you
is.
been there?
Yeah.
Have you
Oh,
ever been?
I went there and fanboyed out
Yeah.
because some of his books have like those locations there, and I'm just like, oh, like that was my.
Oh man. I got to tell my son that, because the only reason we've been to Waukegan is I took him to see Peter Frampton, and
Yeah, over at the Genesee, right?
I took him to see the guy from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and we'd never been to Waukegan before, and I was like, wow. I'll tell him Bradbury's from up there. He'll get a kick out of that.
So is there any like books that have influenced your writing like back then or now that are like popping into your mind at all or because it's a lot of your solo stuff especially it's very lyrical, very poetic. So I didn't know if any sort of like authors or books you're just like influenced that sort of like
Right. Well, there's the It's funny, the two of the records that I made with the band Cocksure are both highly influenced by literature. The album Corporate Sting, that we actually got. I was reading Duane Swierczynski at the time. I don't know if you've ever read him. Ever read him? Fucking great. Philly, he's from Philly, and he's written all these great semi-crime novels, semi-science fiction, and I'm not a sci-fi fan particularly, but he does it great. And so we actually got him to write the liner notes for the album.
That's
And
amazing.
then the follow-up album to that, which is called Be Rich, was highly influenced by two books by Martin Amis. Lionel Asbo was one book, and Yellow Dog is the other. And there's in fact a song called Yellow Dog on the album. Martin Amis is a huge influence on me. He's got everything I want in a writer. Um, but I also have read a lot of Southern Cormac Carson McCullers, sorry. Cormac McCarthy. I just got done rereading Wise Blood again recently, and I have read an inordinate amount of detective pulp fiction. I'm just crazy about it. But I also really like Ian Rankin and Ruth Rendell, Patricia Highsmith. Crime, love it. Love crime novels.
That's
Um, Cornell Woolrich sticks out as one of my favorite crime novelists. But yeah, anything sort of 50s American
Yep.
noir fiction. Jim Thompson. Oh God. Yeah, you got me started, man. I
that's
just
what
keep thinking like
Good job.
Jim
It's like, all right,
yeah,
Neil.
Elroy,
that's what I do. That's
James Elroy, all that stuff is just so addictive to me.
it
Mhm.
is. I was listening to Robert Smith just released. I'm not wearing a shirt just because, but they just released an interview that he did for the new album that's coming out November 1st, and he was talking about how recently he like read through all like John LeClaire books, just
Oh,
and then like the James Bond novels and
Mhm.
stuff like that,
Yeah.
and I was just
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
so like crime, so that's very interesting to see like two times in a day where it's like a lot of like the crime, a lot of noir, a lot
Yeah.
of like espionage and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
I think it's an interesting point to make that when I grew up and I was first in the FiniTribe, like literature played such an important part of bands back then. I found out about Camus from Killing an Arab,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
The Cure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Obviously, there was a band in Edinburgh called Joseph K after the Franz Kafka character, and there was a band that I was really good friends with in Edinburgh called Goodbye, Mr. Mackenzie, who took their name from the Jean Rhys novel. So if you didn't have some kind of beat poetry or a novel in
Right.
your
Some
coat
William
pocket,
Esper.
you weren't shit
Yeah.
back then. It was such a huge part of what we did. I don't know if it is anymore with younger bands, but it was a huge part of how we were was reading was literature and how that sort of crept into what you were doing as a musician.
Right.
And that goes for bands like The Cure as well. There were and Bowie as well, like opened up so many avenues of literature for everyone.
They even have a book out that's like the Bowie's bookshelf, and it's just all these books that and then they have
Yeah,
the 100 books that Bowie like recommended list.
yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, the fact that he would just go on tour or whenever he was like shooting movies and stuff, he'd have like just a whole like chest of
Yep.
like books that he would bring
He had
with
them
him.
sent to the set of Man Who Fell to Earth.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
like, what's his face? Who made that film again? I've forgotten. What's his name again?
That was our
Uh,
okay. That's
Who made The Man Who Fell to Earth?
I'm looking it up
I
right.
keep wanting to say Kubrick, but it wasn't Kubrick. It was someone less malignant than Kubrick.
three.
Give me 1 second. Comment. Wait, no, that's not it. Give me a second.
Oh,
Nick,
hang on.
Nicholas Rogue. Or
Nicholas Roeg.
Rogue? R-O
Roeg.
E-D.
Nicholas Roeg, that's right. Yeah.
Like
Yeah, he made fun of Bowie for having so many books, uh,
he was just well
at
read.
the time. But yeah.
Oh, that's great. What was it like?
But
No, go ahead. Go ahead. No, you're. I'll
no,
let,
I don't have a thought to finish.
no, you're good. Meeting William S. Burroughs. What was that like for you?
Oh, I didn't meet him.
Oh, you didn't meet him.
I
Okay.
wasn't on that, I wasn't on that uh
Am I behind one
bald
album?
at that time. I think it was on the Phenobarb tour.
Was that? Was it? Okay, I was
I don't
behind one.
think anybody would want
I
It's
was
like
behind.
90, 92. But I would have loved to. I mean, even as much as recently on my last album, I did a song that was partly inspired by Cities of the Red Night
Yeah.
uh, and The Place of Dead Roads. These two later books he wrote, which I really loved when they came out. Burroughs was a big part of uh, my upbringing. I mean, mostly because I'd read about him through Throbbing Gristle, but then the more I got into the way he wrote, the cut up stuff and the concepts that he was introducing in his books, they weren't just books anymore. They became kind of tools that
Right.
you could use for what you were doing. And obviously Bowie used the cut up technique. I never have used the cut up technique, not with scissors or razor blades. I just sort of like cut it up in my head and then wrote it down.
Yeah.
I've done that a few times. I know, like during COVID, whenever I had like two kids that were my daughters were just getting stir crazy. And
Yeah.
let's do something weird. And so we would just come up with random things. And I was reading about the cut up method. And I'm like, you know what? Let's grab some books that we don't like and just cut them up. And
Yeah.
we
Oh,
just
nice.
like poke stuff. It was fun.
Yep. Sorry, let's get back. We started wandering. Your solo career has ventured into more melodic and introspective territory. What inspired the shift away from the industrial sound?
Well, there wasn't. There was no shift away from it. I mean,
Okay.
I think
I mean, it got softer, I'll say that. Yeah.
the industrial sound when it happened in like, you know, the mid 80s, it was very, very new to me, but there were certain things about it that were very familiar. I mean, I'd been a very huge Throbbing Gristle fan since 1978. But one of the things about Throbbing Gristle was that it wasn't like, it's just a noise. It wasn't. There were some really pastoral moments
Right. Yeah.
uh and with these records that they made. And I've always been a fan of melody. And that never really left my side. It was hard to sing that Ministry stuff night after night.
Hmm.
It's hard on the voice, and especially if you do have a sense of melody and lyricism, it's nice to step back. But also, Bill Rieflin and the band was very much with me on that journey, let's say. I mean, he helped me with so many of my records, and was also a person who loved melody. And you gotta chase that melody, and it's there in everything. I mean, even um the most vibrant of jazz,
Hmm.
you can find the melody in there. It's not that it's a melody. It's not like the painting is colored red and blue. It's what you can feel from it and what pushes you. And when I write melody, it's a very, when I talk about it, it sounds intellectual, but it's actually a very visceral and
Yes.
human or animalistic thing. Like I feel certain muscles move in a certain way, and that's when the sort of the melodies come out that way. It's physical. Um, I've never studied, you know, where to go with it.
Mhm.
And if I ever play with like real trained musicians, they're like, how did you do that? That's
Yeah,
so
thank
wrong,
you.
but so
Yeah.
right,
Yes.
and that's because I'm writing it from me. With ministry, it was far more like building an engine,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's far more um
discipline.
this part go this cog goes here, this goes here,
Yeah.
and
I know what.
it was far more symmetrical in a sense. Although there's a certain amount of asymmetry in the noise that would go between the iron bars.
Right.
Uh, my sense of melody, like when I write songs, I try to not go too far into it. When I first started writing songs, I used to really overthink them and
Mhm.
say, well, it needs
I can see that.
something here and something there. Now, if it's like, I'll just leave it as it is and move on, you know. That sounds
I,
more natural to me.
as a musician, hearing that a lot because when I sit down and go, okay, I got this thought, I got this feeling, I got the melody in my head, and then I have an array of, everything's all digital now, so I have, VSTs and different synthesizers and da 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 da. So then I'm going, okay, I got this, I'm laying it out. Now I need to find the sound. Now I need to go through this, synthesizer sound or this drum beat or whatever. And I get so, um, yeah, I get so involved, or I become such a perfectionist where it's like, it's not going where I need to go. And then
Yeah.
I'm like, I need to throw it away. And I'm like, no, don't throw it away. Just set it aside and walk away and just try and get back into that place of creativity.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, I felt the same way. In fact, the last record I made, I specifically decided to not, because I was going down that path. Like I have Logic. It's like, ooh, this would sound great on a fucking clarinet or whatever. I just and I said, don't do that. That's like another 10 minutes. You will get lost.
Yes.
So on this last album and a couple of the things I've been recording more recently, I have been using just acoustic instruments and electric guitar, electric bass, but I haven't been going much further than that, And then once I've got that done, then I'll add some embellishments, but I'm not interested in building up like a huge orchestra at the moment, And for that reason, just stay with the melody. And whatever you do in post-production that's fine, but at least you got what you came for. I got myself this nice amp simulator,
Oh yeah, those are good ones.
and yeah, and I play that with headphones on, and just the guitar sounds lovely. But I also um, keep things interesting by using all sorts of different tunings. And that has really brought thing. I've always used alternative tunings, but these days I'm going way deep into it, and it's super fun. And it's great because it means I don't
Oh no,
have
I
to
can't wait to hear it. I can't
play
wait.
live because I can never remember them, and I'm like, well, I can't play a show. I've forgotten all my tunings.
Now I
Yeah,
kind of want to see a live Chris Connelly jazz show. Like I kind of want to
I
see
hope
it.
that happens, right?
Kind
Yeah, it's a shame. I just like if there's any way I don't have to play live, I will go that way. Like I
Gotcha.
really like aggressively pursue not playing live, and I know I shouldn't, and I think I might get into it later on, but I'm just a lazy slob.
I'm gonna go more into like fun questions. If you could create a super group with any musicians, dead or alive, who would be in it, and what would your band name be?
Who would be in it? Oh God. Uh, let's see. Okay. Um, Richard Burton. Um, and I think, yeah, I choose people who aren't musicians. I think that would be really great.
Okay,
Richard Burton. I think I'd really, oh God, no, I'd have to have Elizabeth Taylor then too, wouldn't I?
I love it.
I think Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor, and someone like Angela Davis. I
That would
think that
be
would just
awesome.
Angela Davis, I'll take that.
I'll take it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
pay good money to see that.
I don't know what we'd be called
I
though.
don't know. I don't care. I want to see it. That's
Talking, you'll be playing your jazz in the background. Or just
oh
Yeah.
all right, so
yeah. Go ahead.
what is one thing on your rider and what who has the weirdest rider on like a tour that you could think of at the top of your head?
The weirdest writer?
Yeah, for like whenever you'd go on tour and stuff like that. Do you have any like odd requests or can you think of somebody who has like the weirdest kind of out there request on theirs?
Oh, okay. Well, my only request on tour is leave me alone and let me do my job. Um, as far as weird requests go, I remember once I was on tour and we put on the rider that we wanted an electric hand drill so that we could drill holes in our heads.
Oh,
Driller killer style.
yeah, Driller Killer.
Should do.
Yeah, because that would ultimately be cheaper than buying drugs and booze.
Oh,
It's one way to say you're straight edge. Not
oh, that's
okay.
funny.
What about you?
What's a weird and surprising influence that has shaped your music that most people wouldn't expect?
An influence that shaped my music.
That people go, "Oh my God, I would not have expected that."
Huh. Barbara Streisand?
Oh, wow,
Solid.
really?
Like
How
that.
style, like acting and music, or just all
Music, her singing.
okay? You're
Her
saying,
singing. And yeah, yeah, that's really off the top of my head, but yeah, I love her voice very much. And I know well, that's one of the things my mom in her sort of in the early 80s, she listened to that kind of stuff. So it was always on in the house. And um Evergreen, I think, is just a brilliant song. Um, so yeah, there you go.
a good
The
one.
Streisand, the Carpenters.
I
So
mean,
I think a lot of people are
write that
influenced
one.
Yeah.
by the
Paul
Carpenters.
Williams wrote that one. I love Paul Williams.
Yeah, that's right.
Phantom of
Yeah.
Paradise, all that. Just love.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you an interesting thing I didn't know about Evergreen, which is one of my favorite songs. One of my musician friends pointed out to me that this song is through composed. So that means the song never repeats itself once. Go back and listen to it. It's a marvelous song. It doesn't have a chorus. It just moves through all these changes. I have the sheet music for it somewhere. If I
Holy,
wasn't such a slob, I'd grab it and play.
that's okay. That's
But
amazing.
yeah,
If
Paul
you're,
Williams is a genius.
yep,
Oh yeah, God yes.
absolutely. If your latest album were a movie, what genre would it be, and who would direct it?
Oh God, well that would be the Nico record, wouldn't it? Well,
Hopefully, it's not Warhol that directed it.
I know it'd be just one still of her, but
Well, somebody
um
who just took.
I think you know what? I just recently met Jim Jarmusch and I would have him do it because he's awesome. He's a
It's,
really
yeah,
great guy with a great mind. I think he'd be perfect.
that would be good.
And I'd have him do it in black and white
Yeah,
if
yeah.
if he was amenable to that.
He'd do
Uh,
it.
What's a sound or instrument you haven't used yet, but really want to experiment with?
Um, an instrument I haven't used yet. Okay, I have never used a harp.
Oh,
Uh,
I
Okay.
know. It's weird. I always want to use one too.
well, they're giant, right?
No, they're massive.
I never used a harp, but I have over the past 4 years, I've developed a very close friendship with a professional harp player. So one of these days, I want to get her on one of my records.
That would be
That'd
great.
be amazing.
She's a beautiful player, and it sounds so great. Bill got to work with her.
Really?
That's how I know her, is
Okay.
through Bill.
Was she working with his solo stuff or with front?
She ended up working on well, she works at the hospice where Bill uh
Oh, okay.
yeah, she plays for people who are dying. He got to know her because she was just playing in the corridor one day, and they got to be friends. And she ended up playing, there's a version by Toya Wilcox
Uh,
of 21st Century Schizoid Man. Check it out. She plays harp on that, and it's
that'd be-
gorgeous.
what's her name again?
Her name is Jessica Gallo, Gallo.
Okay. Yeah, I love King Crimson, so I'll have to check that one out. That's got to be good.
Okay.
So, if you could play a live show, oh wait, no, I already did that one.
You
Never
already
mind.
did that
Yeah, I
one.
think I covered that one. That was the live show.
Yeah, the
And
weird
you.
building.
So, oh, what's your favorite place to eat in Chicago?
To
Oh,
eat in Chicago,
Yeah.
my house. I do all the cooking and I really enjoy it. Um, but if I was going to go out to eat, oh my God, Ethiopian Diamond. It's an
Really?
Ethiopian restaurant. Oh, and I'm fasting right now for
Oh,
this medical procedure. So now I'm like
get it. Yep. Ooh.
Ethiopian Diamond. It's an Ethiopian place. They do these amazing vegetarian platters, and it's just gorgeous.
and he's reminding you of food. What the hell,
I
man?
know. I'm sorry.
What the hell?
But
Apologize. Is there anything else you want to add?
Uh,
we don't go out to eat very much, 'cause like family, kids, and everything like that. It's just too complicated.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the only other question I had was just something simple, which is like, what's your latest media addiction right now, or anything to suggest, like show, movie, album wise, like anything on your like listening history that you're just like, this is the fucking shit. Like,
Yeah.
hear it.
My favorite album, there's two albums that came out. One of them definitely came out this year, um, by an English sax player called Nubia Garcia, and she put out a record called Odyssey maybe about 2 months ago, and it's breathtaking.
Wow.
Like one of these records that really, if there was a heaven, this is what it would sound like. It's just
Wow.
gorgeous. It's strong. The other record I heard recently, which really changed me, was an album by another Connolly.
Oh, okay.
This person's called Clarissa Connolly, and she put out a record called World of Work. She's a Scottish woman living in Finland, I believe. She grew up in Finland, and she's made this. You can't. It's like when you hear one of these records that it's just you can't pigeonhole it. It's beyond categorization, but it's also so beautiful you don't know when it starts and when it ends. These records are not long records. They're like incredible paintings. So I'm really happy that, you know, people are insanely creative against all odds. There's still incredible music being made a lot. It's good to know. And records that can humble you, it's like, oh my God, how did they do that? How is that even possible?
One last one. If you have any advice for any musicians watching this, what advice do you have?
Always do it because you love it, you
Agreed.
know.
I think these are the points.
I think do it because you love it. Be as intuitive as you can about what you do and who you do it with. If something doesn't feel right, ask yourself why it doesn't feel right, and maybe it's time to move on. Um, and if it does feel right, think of ways to enhance it and keep it going. And I think that anyone who's creative, whether they're writing or painting, or in a band, you really have to strip away the intellectual part and just get to know yourself as a fucking ape. And and
Yes,
and,
thank you. Yeah.
and just enjoy what you do and just be like I was talking about, like how my body moves and twitches when I'm finding be in touch with your body. Forget about your brain. Your brain will synthesize things and get them out. It'll be fine. But pay attention to your body. And that's what I'd say to people, if they choose to take my advice, which
I hope they do. It sounds best. Yeah, it sounds amazing.
Love
All right. Well, Chris, I thank you very much for taking the time.
thank you.
I hope all is well.
It was
And
a real pleasure talking
I'll
to you
let you know
guys.
when the podcast is out. So thanks, buddy.
Absolutely.
Thank you.